Good morning. I am Ethel Reeves. I serve as Director of Equity and Community Relations with Lynchburg City Schools. Thank you for being a part of our short notice press conference this morning to discuss the switch to remote learning at EC Glass High School. We did receive media requests from many of our media sources, and we wanted to be sure that everyone heard the same information at the same time. So we're grateful that you are here. We want to be sure that our community knows exactly what's going on, and we have with us a few LCS administrators and school board members who are here to be sure that we are communicating effectively and that we give you the information that you need in order to help us communicate. I am always grateful for the support that we have of our media sources. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do to help us. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I want to start first by introducing the LCS employees who are on the screen, who are joining us today. I want to start with Dr. Crystal Edwards, who is our superintendent.
Good morning, everyone. And again, thank you for joining us. Anything that we can do to get the message out, to make sure that our community understands what we're doing and what our plans are for the future as we deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and make adjustments going forward. So thank you for being here.
How are you?
Awesome. If I'm just going to go across my screen here, we have Principal Rose Flaugher, Deputy Superintendent Amy Pugh, Director of Information Technology John Collins, Director of Student Services Latanya Brown, Executive Administrator Denise Spinner. We have Principal at Heritage High School, Mr. Tim Beatty. My communications team is here in its entirety. We have school board members, Dr. Atul Gupta, School Board Chair, Dr. James Coleman, School Board Member, Dr. Kim Sinha, School Board Member, Dr. Robert Brennan. Have I forgotten any LCS employees?
I think you got them all.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open it up to our media sources if they would like to introduce themselves. I see Mia Nelson.
Hi, I'm Mia Nelson. I'm a reporter with WSCT. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Tim Harfman with WSLS 10 News. Thanks for doing this on short notice.
Thank you for being here on short notice. We appreciate you. I'm seeing DEM.
Good morning, it's Dana Evans with WSCT.
Awesome, Dana. Thank you for being here.
And hi, I'm Mary White, Small Shaw with WLNI, and I'm showing up as WLNI producer as well.
Thank you so much for being here as well. And then I see Landry Coleman. Landry, thank you for being here with us. Well, what we want to do is get started and explain what it is, the decision that was made yesterday to switch at EC Glass High School from in-person learning to remote learning. Ms. Flaugher, would you like to start?
Certainly, unless someone else would like to start. Yes, we did make the decision to go remote for the next, or virtual for the next 3 days, because we are seeing an increase in absences, faculty, staff absences, and it was becoming ever more difficult to cover classes. And so that is when we had the discussions with our central office staff to begin looking at those numbers. And we hope that is for a short and brief amount of time, as we are constantly on a daily basis evaluating that. But it just becomes very, very difficult when you have a large number of faculty, and staff to cover classes effectively when you, from day to day, that is ever changing. So that is where we started with that.
We also took into consideration, if I can just add, that
yet a large number of calls coming in regarding possible exposure, possible positive cases. And in order to determine the spread and to begin contact tracing, we want to make sure that we have an accurate number and have a grasp and a handle on how many staff, how many students are positive, how many are considered close contacts and would need to be in quarantine. And with that comes the concern for potential in-school spread. So I think that we also looked at that as a factor in moving to remote instruction for the next 3 days.
And if I can add, just from the legislative end, we're all aware of Senate Bill 1303, which is the requirement that we stay open 5 days a week. We are allowed to shift to remote learning to mitigate any of the effects for COVID. But there's also House Bill 1790 and Senate Bill 1132, which is the guidance for unscheduled remote learning days. Those are remote learning days that were not planned, as this one was not a planned remote learning days. And under certain situations, school emergencies, critical things, staff shortages, and this situation could constitute a school emergency, we can use up to 10 remote learning days per school for instruction if we need to. We've done that on 2 occasions already in the school year. At Lincoln Elementary School earlier this school year, we had the same sort of conference and same sort of conclusion that due to staff shortages combined with the effects of COVID, we went to remote learning for 2 days with synchronous instruction for our students. Later, we had the same experience with Sheffield Elementary School, where a similar situation, staff absenteeism due to COVID, along with some other factors that were forming staff absenteeism. And again, we shifted to remote learning with synchronized instruction for our students. Those were 2 elementary schools. This is the first time that we see it at the high school level with EC Glass High School. So we are using the same protocols that we have used in the past for a temporary shift just to mitigate the effects of the staff absenteeism, student absenteeism, and the COVID calls, which we are still working on some contact tracing.
Awesome. Director Brown, did you want to speak to anything related to contact tracing, COVID numbers, quarantining?
I would say our numbers have been high. We've had high volumes of calls from parents and emails in regards to their students being either exposed or testing positive for COVID. What we're seeing is the high community spread impacting our schools at this time. And trying to keep everyone as safe as possible, we're trying to work through all of those phone calls and emails as quickly as possible. To do that, that might impact, the schools. So we might have to ask for a school to temporarily pause or go to remote to ensure that the spread is not in the school or taken off based upon the number of quarantines. In terms of COVID cases testing positive, we are seeing that increase as well as we're moving onto our 2nd week of being back in school from winter break. And also our quarantine numbers have been steadily rising, which is paralleling the numbers within the community as well. So that being said, we're working closely with VDH to make sure that we're doing everything possible to mitigate the spread of COVID within. We're reinforcing and remodeling, not remodeling, we're not remodeling the house, but modeling mask wearing, how to wash your hands, how to sanitize your hands. And we're re-emphasizing those things all over again to our staff, our students, and our families, trying to make sure that we can keep our doors open for that in-person instruction as well. But all of our teams have been deployed from central office and all extra staff to assist with contact tracing. This has almost been 24 hours since right before Christmas break. I can tell you the COVID response team worked throughout Christmas break. We took calls on Christmas Eve and Christmas to ensure that our athletic teams were safe over the break as well. So as a member of the COVID response team, we're working around the clock to ensure the safety of everyone, including our families, because we're sending our staff and our students home to our families and making sure that they have the most current information in terms of the guidelines that we're following. And we're trying to do that in a timely manner as well.
Thank you. One of the other questions, and I'll begin to open this up to the media, but one of the things, and Dr. Edwards shared information about how we've done this in the past, and Ms. Flaugher, you may want to speak to this as with regard to this actual switch. How are teachers prepared? What implications does this have for our students? And particularly, Mr. Collins, the internet access at homes. Are there things that we're doing to help our families? So I'll start with Principal Flaugher to see if she has any more comments with regard to our faculty and staff members and our students. And then if Mr. Collins, you talk about the Wi-Fi and the internet access.
Well, if anything, the last couple of years has taught us is that we need to be prepared to go virtual. But it cannot be understated. Most teachers have not had extensive training in how to teach virtually. But the big thing that we stress here is working together, and we have a great group of teachers, staff, students, and families. And we can't anticipate everything, and we haven't anticipated everything, but we have worked together to problem solve. And I have been very pleased walking around this morning to see the number of students that are participating in our Zoom lessons. And I would like your help with the media communicating. We are doing synchronous lessons. We have a schedule. We expect students to log on and participate in instruction all day long, following that schedule. And we are taking attendance every single period. This is hopefully for just a short amount of time. We hope to be back in school next Tuesday. But our teachers, we had talked to our teachers Monday afternoon and said, you need to be prepared for this. Make sure your Google Classrooms are up to date. We've had tremendous support from our IT department, have wonderful new camera units that teachers have been in to pick up, and they were ready to go. And again, we are working together. If we've missed anything, we are trying to solve that. And I appreciate emails that I've gotten from parents. I got an email from a student first thing this morning and was able to solve her problem. Our kids are advocating for themselves, and that's what we need them to do. But we are delivering instruction, following our schedule every single period, and we are taking attendance. And that is what a huge difference from last year where we did attendance for the whole day. We are taking attendance every single period. And we are trying to over communicate with our families. I'll have something coming out again later on this afternoon from a teacher and another assistant principal, where we're going to make sure they understand that we are doing synchronous learning and that we are taking attendance. So we appreciate all the feedback from our students, from our families, from our teachers, and the tremendous support that we've gotten from our IT department as well. In fact, I just left. We are set up from 11 to 1, and we are issuing out Chromebooks for people who have forgotten them, band instruments if anybody needed them. We have meals from 11 to 1, and we are solving problems if students are coming in and asking questions. So we're just, again, trying to over communicate, and again, having lessons all day long. Hope that wasn't too much.
No, thank you. Ms. Pugh, and I don't want to neglect working with curriculum and instruction if you had any comments with regard to virtual learning.
Absolutely. And I think Principal Flaugher did mention that, last year during the pandemic, and our teachers and our students have had experience with remote instruction, but that remote instruction delivery of that instruction was very different than this is for these 3 days. So at the beginning of the year, I worked with many different departments, curriculum and instruction, as well as IT, special education, student services, and we worked collaboratively collaboratively with our schools to develop some protocols and some guidelines and some guidance for our staff and our teachers, as well as our students, because this is posted on our website. So we really looked at instruction and those different levels of, what does it look like if we are open all classes, all schools 5 days a week? And that's our typical instructional day. What does it look like if we have a few students in a class or a school who may be in quarantine? What does instruction look like for them? And then we looked at what does it look like if an entire class is in quarantine, or if a school is in quarantine, or we, in this case, like EC Glass, and previously with Lincoln Elementary and Sheffield Elementary, went to remote instruction for a few days. So we put together some guidance, some sample schedules, some suggestions of activities and how to use that time, and provided those to our principals to share with our teachers to go over those. We have reminded them of those throughout the fall semester. Again, we just reshared that information with them last week as we came back from winter break. So we have been preparing and thinking about instruction and what that would look like in many different cases. Again, we looked at what IT would need to think about in those different scenarios. We looked at transportation and food service, meal deliveries, and meal for our students. So we were very prepared for these types of situations that will have come and will probably continue to come in the coming weeks.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Collins.
I don't know, there's a lot I can say. We do acknowledge that we have an equity gap in internet access and access for our kids at home. So we do have, in addition to the Chromebooks and the band equipment, we do have several hundred hotspots that have been provided by T-Mobile. So families can come and pick those up and take those home so they can get online. Additionally, Zoom, while this is not ideal, Zoom can be attended by phone. So you can dial in, a student could dial in even if they don't necessarily have internet, but they do have phone access. And then just one small thing, we also are providing training for all of our teachers on how to do virtual instruction. We've offered several courses this year, a lot last year, individual one-on-one training, group sessions as we were allowed, Zoom trainings for our teachers. And then the next phase and part of this is training our kids on how to learn virtually. It's a two-way piece here. So that's also something that we're doing.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank the team for all that you've shared. I will ask Dr. Coleman or any school board member if you have any comments before we open this up to the media.
I would just like to say on behalf of the Lynchburg City School Board that we are very, very grateful to have the dynamic team of Dr. Edwards and her staff on top of these matters, doing what is best for kids. And we thank you as our media for helping us to get the word out to all of our stakeholders of how we are providing quality education to all schools and all students in the safest and most best possible way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we want to open it up for questions. So we'll start with our media sources. Are there other questions that you have? If you could just unmute and ask your question.
Yes, I have a question. So you mentioned that one of the main reasons why you had to really shift to remote learning in the first place was because of faculty absences, staff absences. Is this going to affect teachers available to be teaching remotely as well?
Me, I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly, because they are the teachers are teaching remotely. Those who can come in are in the schools right now, and they're doing synchronous learning, synchronous instruction with their students. And even if we needed to make some provisions to help folks who may be quarantined but still able to do it, our teachers have been wonderful in terms of, listen, I know I have to stay home or stay isolated, but I still want to meet with my students. And Ms. Principal Flaugher, if you want to follow up on that.
Thank you. I just want to verify whether, teachers were having, a lot of teachers were had to be out because of calling in being sick with COVID, having to quarantine, and whether that was just affecting any of the remote learning. So thank you.
Mia, I just would add that we do have teachers who are sick. And if they're sick, we're obviously not expecting them to do that. But if they are able, if they feel well enough and they're in quarantine, they are teleworking and they are expected to teach kids. If we have to provide them additional support, we do that, and they're doing a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Tim?
Can you guys tell us how many faculty members, teachers have called out, and as far as the volume of calls of students being exposed? I mean, why EC Glass? I'm sure they're not the only school seeing a rise in cases. So would you be able to tell us what kind of sounded the alarm, if you will?
So across the board, what we look at, we've kind of come up with some metrics. When we're approaching about 30% of teacher absenteeism, whether it's COVID or whether it's related to some other medical or something else, we start looking at the impact on the school and maintaining a safe environment for instruction. And then also the ability to have substitutes or other staff cover as well. When we get to that point in which, we're looking at the safety and creating that atmosphere in which instruction can occur to the best of its ability and it's being compromised, at that point, we meet as a team to discuss the next steps. We come together as a division before making a final recommendation to the superintendent for remote instruction, trying to weigh out all possibilities. Even when it comes down to the quarantine and isolations, we're looking at the students daily. And so we have to monitor the number of phone calls, the number of emails. We're looking at community quarantine, but also quarantine and positive cases within each individual school. And it's day by day. I can't tell you that it's a cookie cutter because it's not. So we would like to be upfront with the public and say that we are monitoring on a day by day basis with that, and to get things done. And we might see other schools go remote learning at some point throughout, I call it our pandemic season that usually ends towards the end of May that we're seeing from last year. So we're going day by day and assessing each school, school by school, as we're doing things and getting things done. So I can't give you a concrete number because each school will look different based upon its staff, based upon whether it's COVID or other absences and other factors at that time, and the ability for us to send substitutes or the availability of substitutes as well within the division.
Are there any other schools, just to follow up there, I understand it's a day-by-day basis, but are there any other schools on the verge of that, close to that 30% right now, where they may have to wind up going virtual as well?
I would say right now, we have probably about 2 schools that we are monitoring closely at this time. And we monitor all of our schools. So we're watching 2 schools for their numbers to see if there's an uptick today within those numbers and tomorrow. But they are not close to that 30%. They're starting to trend upwards. And so we're watching them very closely.
Can you tell us which ones real quick? Can you tell us sorry, last question for you. Can you tell us which those schools are?
At this time, I choose not to because I don't want to put any parents into panic at this time, especially if, the pendulum starts swinging the other way and the numbers start going down at that time. So that's why it's day by day. We're doing our best. I have my nurse coordinator out at schools today. I have my secretaries deployed to school at this time. So we're sending all staff to schools, trying to keep our doors open. So if, remote is our last option. So if we can keep our schools open and keep everyone safe, we will do that. And you will even see myself, superintendent, and everyone else that's directors on this call. We will be out at schools. And if we can keep those doors open just by us being in the building, we're going to do that first to keep those doors open.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Ms. Pugh, were you going to interject? No? Okay. All right. I saw Ms. Smallshaw.
Oh, hi. Yes, this is Mary at WLNI. Just wondering if students who go to the early college at Central Virginia Community College or go to the governor's school, are they going to those in person or are they having to learn remotely as well?
We discussed that yesterday and we made the decision for those students for the next 3 days to learn remotely as well. As I mentioned earlier, we not only had the conversation about the 30% or being over 30% with staff absenteeism and the concern there, but we're also concerned about the rising number of positive cases and quarantines and contact tracing and spread. And so that was one of the other factors that led to switching to remote learning at EC Glass. And so we didn't want the potential spread to move to governor's school, early college, STEM Academy, and those types of things. So we have asked that those students continue or move to that remote learning for the next 3 days, just to be safe, because we're monitoring those numbers and don't want the spread to go into different areas of the community.
And so along those lines, have you told the students anything else, like, don't go to the movies, don't do anything else that could possibly spread this? Because I know I have a high school son myself, and I know that, they're doing things. They're hanging out with their friends and not necessarily their friends from school, from other schools as well.
Certainly. And, I think we, as often as we can, remind our families, our students, our staff to be safe, to consider health mitigation strategies, wearing masks, washing hands, social distancing as possible. So we continue to emphasize that, but outside of school, those are choices that they make and that their families allow them to do. So all we can do is just reiterate the positive message and ask them to do that. And we continue to do that on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just have one more for you about testing availability. We know that across the country, especially here in our region, there's, folks are having difficulty, having a hard time finding testing. I know that you guys had that kind of the partnership with the Central Virginia Health District when it came to vaccines. You were administering vaccines to faculty at first at EC Glass. Do you have any type of relationship, any partnership right now to help both faculty and students have access to more testing?
I'm glad that you asked that question. We're under the partnership with Virginia Department of Health and VDOE. We have a program called VISTA. We offer free testing. At first, we started off with 6 schools. Next week, we're opening it up to the remainder of our schools for testing. Students or staff can get tested. It's once a week, and it takes less than 3 minutes to do the test. And we're notified within 24 hours in regards to whether or not a person is positive or negative. A plus to signing up for that is that we have access to the BioNext Now test kits. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, we couldn't receive on those test kits while we were out for break. So we're waiting on our new test kits to come in. We can send those home with any student or staff member that has signed up for that VISTA program. We dispersed over 500 before we left for break. And at that point, we gave them out to anyone that wanted to take the test kits home. They just had to test before December the 31st. So we had faculty to use them. They could use them with their staff, their family members. Some of them used them before they traveled. So we're waiting on our next shipment to come in. And as soon as we have them, we disperse them out to the schools, transportations, facilities, and maintenance, and central office as soon as they come in. So I would say, community, if you're listening, if you have not signed up, all the schools have sent a link last week. The communications team, Ms. Reeves in her office, sent another one at the beginning of this week. And we will send out a link again. All you have to do is contact your school and they can get you the link to sign up. The total registration and consent process for both links takes less than 8 minutes to complete. And if you need help, you can reach out to my office, and it's the Office of Student Services, and we'll get you signed up as well. So the biggest thing that the community can do to help us control the spread would be 1, to get vaccinated, 2, get the booster, and 3, to sign up for the random testing to help us ensure that we can keep our doors open as long as possible.
Just want to make sure I heard you correctly. It's 6 schools right now, 6 that are available for testing, and then the others open up next week.
Yes.
So why haven't the other schools been available to do that yet? Why is it only beginning now?
It was a new program, and so we started to do the implementation slowly. We started with 3, and we started right before Thanksgiving break. So we could monitor and go through the process and make sure that it was flowing smoothly. And then we added on 3 more schools right there, right before we left for Christmas. And so we were trying to do a slow implementation as we were getting this up and running, because the same team that's monitoring that process is monitoring your COVID contacts and also working with the schools, knowing that we've had some shortages, because when they come on site, we provide an area for testing. And also we have to retrieve students as well. The process is quick, and Ms. Flaugher has also experienced it already. She can speak to the process. And the company that we've been working with have been excellent to work with. And so we're getting it up and moving. We just asked a little time to do full implementation with everything that was going on in the division at this time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to be mindful of the time. I know that we have to get back to doing the business of the day, but I wanted to thank everyone for being here. This is a recording that we will share with the same media sources that we sent the press release to. And if anyone does not receive it, then please reach back out to me. We want to make sure that the information gets to you. Again, thank you so much for being here. We ask that you continue to help us get the word out. Help us to create those positive stories that will help our community better understand what it is that we're doing here with Lynchburg City Schools. Thank you so much, everyone.